In this update, we've got daily storm chances and a low pressure center in the Gulf lifts north, bringing much needed rain for South Texas and East Texas and portions of the Southeast. And then the heat really starts to build going into next week. And then it really starts to get ridiculous into next weekend. Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here with your Thursday morning update. I can't believe this year is halfway over already. We're getting into the heart of summer, and it's going to feel every bit of summer for a lot of you guys out there. So if you do like detailed weather breakdowns on a daily basis, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and notification bell to get all my daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. So let's take a look at the overall satellite picture this morning. Of course, the real standout here, this little 40% chance of probability of forming, and at this stage of the game, it's not going to form into a tropical depression or tropical storm, but it's lifting north with the south wind. It's going to bring much needed rain for a good chunk of South Texas. You can already see the instability, and that just these milky white colors as well. That kind of shows you the path, and then this solid gray, that's that ridge of high pressure. That's basically your blocking mechanism that it's only going to be lifting into East Texas and shifting off into the Southeast. We've got the monsoonal flow really starting to come alive and really prevalent. But along this boundary, we do have some instability in the portions of Kansas, getting into northwestern parts of Iowa, and then the storms get really active heading into portions of central and northern Wisconsin. So if we take a look at the setup and where the heaviest rain will fall later on this afternoon, these are diurnal driven storms, meaning these are daytime heating thunderstorms with that low pressure center lifting north. So these areas in yellow here, essentially from Victoria to Galveston and to say Beaumont, you're looking at about possibly 2 to 4 inches of rain today with that low pressure center creeping along the coast. Even far south is going into Corpus Christi, you could be looking at another inch of rain. But along this boundary, really a coastal regions today, as this low pressure center really starts to drift further north, southern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, Alabama, getting into the panhandle of Florida and to southern Georgia. And then of course the monsoonal flow will remain active. And the storm threat is further north. So right along that boundary where they are getting that instability in Wisconsin this morning, there's going to be another round later on this afternoon. So that's going to take shape right along this boundary into portions of Kansas, getting into Nebraska here, you know, heading into Iowa. And then there's a little bit higher instability as you creep into northern Iowa, and especially as you get into portions of southern Minnesota, and then especially into central and northern Wisconsin. So those storms could be on the stronger side with those 60-mile-per-hour winds and some quarter-size hail later on this afternoon. So as we transfer into tomorrow on Friday, it kind of looked the same, right? That low pressure center continues to creep further north. We may add another 2 to 4 inches of rain, possibly into portions of Galveston. That shifts into, say, Lake Charles area this time. But that low pressure system, it's pretty slow moving, and it's just kind of creeping along. So it's going to be dumping some fairly significant rain amounts, really, especially along the coast. I would think the Houston Metroplex as a whole, probably 1 to 2 inches of rain from this system. But yeah, points to the south and to Galveston, you're probably looking at 4 to 6 inches of rain from this particular system. And then even a small, isolated amounts can't be rolled out, picking up 8, even much as 10 inches in very isolated spots with this low pressure center continuing to drift further off to the north. And then there's that monsoonal flow continuing to remain active and alive. But going into your Friday storm threat, it's not really much to speak of as far as on the severe side. Storms could get a little bumpy up here into portions of Ohio and to Pennsylvania and upstate New York. But overall, the story is going to be that low pressure system, at least for the next couple of days, further to the south. So this gives you an idea of where the rainfall will be over the next 48 hours, to include all the way through now through Saturday morning. And of course, there's the monsoonal flow over the Four Corners region, really primarily over New Mexico. It's been really prevalent. But now it's actually creeping into Colorado, along this boundary here into portions of Nebraska, into southern parts of South Dakota. Could be looking at some heavier amounts with that increased, just warm Gulf flow off the Gulf with those higher dew points. And there's your bullseye, really right along the coast there, of upwards to 4 to 6 inches, possibly 6 to 8 inches just to the next 2 days. So we could be looking at, these areas have been bone dry. I know Hobby Airport's like 14 inches below average for this time of year. So even if they do get 6 inches of rain, they're still going to be 8 inches behind what they typically see for this time of year. So this rain is actually much well needed. Unfortunately, it might come down a little bit too fast, too soon, and could have some isolated flooding, but a lot of this will soak in to the ground. So as we go into Saturday, that low pressure center will continue to shift a little bit further north. So the ridge of high pressure is going to be pretty much dominant over much of central Texas and North Texas. I mean, you might creep into maybe a 20% shower into North Texas, but other than that, it's going to be primarily into East Texas. Tyler going east, going into Shreveport, essentially now creeping into Arkansas. But that low pressure center is only going to get left so far north, and it just more or less kind of fizzle out and be elongated along this boundary. So we could be looking at some heavier activity shifting further into Florida, getting into portions of Georgia, and then there's that boundary to the north. So we've got all that heat building, all that south wind from the Gulf of Mexico along this boundary. So that's going to tap in and aid into that moisture. And we could be looking at possibly some heavier rains, maybe some 1 to 2 inch sporadic amounts heading into Missouri, southern Illinois, southern Indiana, going into portions of Kentucky here, into West Virginia, as well as Virginia, going into the daytime hours on your Saturday. And some of those storms could be on the severe side, especially as you get up to Scranton and to portions of eastern Pennsylvania, central and northern Jersey here, getting into Long Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island there. Those areas could be looking at some stronger wind gusts of 60 mile per hour in the heat of the afternoon, and some larger hail. Well, that would be some quarter size hail, even possibly maybe some sporadic ping pong size hail with these thunderstorms, as they take advantage of that daytime heat and that all that instability they're going to be able to tap into. But as we go into your holiday on Monday, the heat really starts to build, right? So you've been kind of taking a reprieve in a good midsection of the country. We had that little cool front came through. Now the things have subsided. So I think by Monday, you're probably talking about triple digit heat again back into North Texas, filtering portions of Oklahoma, as this ridge of high pressure will just kind of expand and really start to dominate for much of next week. But there's the trough coming back for the west and the Pacific Northwest. There's not much rain with it, but it is cooler conditions. So you had that big warm up there for a couple of days, but now things are going to turn nice again and pretty comfortable up here into the Pacific Northwest. And there's that instability further to the northeast. So as we get into Monday, any somewhat cooler conditions, or to average to a little bit below average conditions, will be far interior of New England here. So, but yeah, going into next week, there's Tuesday, right? So we're going to be talking about this ridge of high pressures. We're getting into the almost pretty much the heart of summer now. So now we're talking a 594 millibar ridge of high pressure. That's some heat really starting to build. That's basically widespread triple digits coming back for a good chunk of Texas, central Texas, northern Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, northern Louisiana, getting into portions of Mississippi here. I think that ridge will just kind of expand as further to the north, the jet stream lifts further to the north as well. So it's a pretty sharp gradient of this demarcation line in the central part of the U.S. with this ridge of high pressure almost dominating the overall pattern, as the upper level winds will lift further to the north, and you have that instability. But there's not much rain under these clouds into the Pacific Northwest. But as you get, and we look for any, say, kinks of the hose and along this boundary, could be looking at some heavier rains into portions of northern Montana by then, and they could actually use the rain up there. That traverses across the Dakotas again, getting into Minnesota, and forms along the Great Lakes and fishtails down portions of the Mid-Atlantic. But underneath that, we've got that south wind, right? The dew points are going to be cranking. We're probably talking about heat advisories coming back for a good chunk of next week. So you can see where the lower dew points, that's where all the dry area is, right? It's been 27 days and 28 days. I lost count now. It's been the third. So we're almost going out a month without any rain into the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So it's going to be really easy to heat these atmospheres up with these lower dew points and lower humidity values, and of course with the ridge of high pressure overhead, it's just going to be talking about all about the heat, dominating heat and stinking air, and going to be almost impossible to rain underneath that. But you can see where all the dry areas, where all the moist areas, we're talking dew points in the 70s, if not middle 70s. So that gives you an idea. In the heart of summer, yeah, we're probably talking about some pretty intense heat. And here's your heat index, widespread 105s, 106, upwards to 110. I mean, this is oppressive stuff, and this is only Wednesday, guys. So I think things start to really get cranking Monday, and they start to build throughout the week, next week. And here's by Wednesday, we've got plenty of triple-digit heat with the heat index, and that's going to be widespread heat advisories in in a good chunk of this area as the ridge high pressure just really starts to expand. Here's the setup going into Thursday, going into Friday with your humidity values. I put this graph on, kind of show you where all the moist and sticky air will be, right? I mean, this is the heart of the Metroplex, heart of Texas, 16% humidity. That's nothing. That is nothing. So that's going to be easily to be able to warm up that atmosphere, because these areas, the soil is bone dry by then. But all the mugginess and the more moist air will be over portions of the southeast where they are going to be getting that rain. And then of course where all the brown shaded areas, that's where you have all the lower dew points, the lower humidity, and next to impossible to rain underneath that type of air mass. But here's the overall setup over the next 7 days as far as your rain. So I told you that's over 2 days. Now this is over 7 days. The monsoonal flow continues to remain active. I don't really see that stopping. We do have, with that jet stream further to the north, right? That brings the instability to the north. So you have northern Idaho, you got northern Montana with the rain, into the Dakotas. Any type of kinks in the hose will bring a little bit higher instability. So that brings higher rain chances for them into Minnesota, Wisconsin, into Iowa. And this goes into the Ohio Valley. There's your low pressure center will be tapping into that for the next couple of days, and for the deep south. And then along these boundaries, so there's your rain for a good chunk of the south and the southeast. Again, not much for Texas, not much of anything for Oklahoma. Everything's basically South Texas and East Texas, and points to the southeast. And then of course you have that instability with those severe threat over the next couple of days into portions of the northeast, and you have that boundary as well. But beyond that, it gets almost like ridiculous going into next weekend. I mean, this is the latest European guidance going into next weekend. By Monday or Tuesday, we have a 594 millibar ridge of high pressure. By next weekend, we're talking 597. We're already getting into your averages of your hottest time of the year. So you're compounding that with a 597 millibar high pressure, 600 over Colorado. That's some intense heat, guys. That just tells you that's widespread triple digits going to be taking place for a good chunk of multiple states going into next week. And then it really starts to expand into next weekend, where this heat could be the highest temperatures you've seen so far this year, well into the triple digits. Even 110s are probably not going to be out of the realm of possibility under a 600 millibar high pressure. And the GFS even has it even more intense, with a good chunk of multiple states over a 600 millibar ridge of high pressure, and much of the 597 over a good swath of 10 to 12 states here. So we could be looking at some intense, almost dangerous heat, with probably extreme, excessive heat advisories, excessive heat warnings going into next weekend, as the heat really starts to amplify going into next week, but really starts to get intense going into next weekend. So hey, I know it's hot stuff. It's the middle of summer, guys. Hang in there. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely leave your comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.